He has that small silence that's very knowing that says, well, go on, sing it. So I go, okay, I'll sing it. So I start singing 808 and I do it like a little bit of the song.
And they teach us how to dance to Aretha Franklin's music.
It's about all of us, not about Black folks or white folks. It's about...
I'm just going to dive in. Hi, Cynthia.
Hello, Maureen.
Start by asking, what was the first time you ever heard Aretha Franklin's music?
I was in the back of my mum's Ford car. We were driving to school. I remember the car was blue, and we listened to this radio station called Magic FM. And it's like an eclectic station of all different types of music, from the Mechanics to Annie Lennox to Kate Bush. One day we're driving on the way to school, and I want to say it was Think by Aretha that came on the radio. And I was like, what is this music? And who is this person's voice? And I just remember like enjoying it. And I think I'm like 9 or 10. And then later on, Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves comes on. And I was like, if he can do that as well, who's that? And I just sort of fell in love and started like finding all of the songs that I could possibly find. Like, I just fell deeply in love with her voice. I fell deeply in love with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've grown up listening and hearing it from my grandma. We'd always play Aretha Franklin in the car, or we'll hear it on the radio, and she'd play Chain of Fools, and then I'd hear it from my mom as well. So I've always grown up listening to her music.
And I'm from Detroit, so we grew up with all that music, and I don't remember a time ever not hearing it. And, I lived about a mile away from the church, I come to find out, but I never went over there because I was 7. Then 6, 7, and 8, when we were on West Grand Boulevard right down the street from New Bethel. But no, I grew up with that music, so I don't ever remember time now.
Do you remember the first time you ever heard Aretha Franklin's music?
I do. It's funny. I was just talking to Brian Grazer, because music has that thing where you hear a song and you remember where you were when you heard it. My aunts, so I wasn't, I was I wouldn't buy her records. I was too young for that. But they, after church, they would have their pocketbooks and they'd bring over their, what do you call them? The 45s, and they'd put them on the turntable and they'd teach us how to dance to Aretha Franklin's music. So most of the Aretha Franklin songs that I've fallen in love with were like Rock Steady, for example. They taught me how to dance to Rock Steady, those were the first times.
It's going to be a whole new vibe that brings people together. I'm just a link in your chain.
Well, you only got 3 chords?
We'll make them sound like $1 million. Chain.
I know scripts can take a long time, so if my timeline's off here, just correct me. But you also have the United States versus Billie Holiday out there in the hemisphere right now. Did you work on these in relation to each other? And did you find a lot of unexpected or threads between these two, like very passionate, socially active artists?
That's a great question, Maureen. I wrote Billie Holiday first. I believe I started in 2017. So my bookshelves were filled with Billie Holiday books. And then I got the call in 2019 to work on Aretha, and my books became filled with Aretha books. Yeah, 2 icons in American history or world history, really. 2 artists who people still lean on and find strength in. Differences, Billie Holiday didn't have the kind of family that Aretha had. And I believe that Aretha's genius flourished in part because she had such a strong family unit. She had the best backup singers any woman could want. Her sisters, had her back. Her father was a North Star that led the way. And her brother Cecil was there, always loving and supportive to her. Her hidden asset, as she calls him, because he was so helpful in business. But through both stories, it gave me I was in the company of saints, those 2 women. You know what I mean? I was in the company of these sister saints, and such pride for just being a woman in America. You know what I mean? A Black woman in America, a woman in America, what we endure, what we bring to the table, right? It's just like, look at what we can do.
Yeah,
You know?
well, maybe that's it. But did you find that there was something the same within the core of them that made them become who they became?
Difficulty and their response to it. They each had difficult, circumstances, and the way they responded to it was to say, if they were speaking to difficulty, you are not taking me down.
Southern trees,
Get her off that stage.
they're strange fruit.
They won't let me sing nowhere. No clubs, no money, no nothing. You gotta understand, baby, right now I'm in a situation.
Look, you said we could beat this, Billy.
I need something now.
I read that your first sort of call or meeting about this came out of you singing an Aretha song on a red carpet. Is that true?
Yes, it is very true.
It's amazing.
It's my life. This kind of thing happens. I was minding my own business, just going to the Tonys. That I was very excited because I was, first year probably after like walking on the red carpet, just like I'd already won the Tony, and it's one of my favorite award shows to be at because it's like Broadway and it's where I like grew up essentially. Being at the theater, and I know I'm singing that night as well. So I was like on a high, and then I'm on the red carpet, and Mark and I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it's Variety, asks me to sing my guilty pleasure song. And I say, well, my guilty pleasure song is, no, he doesn't ask me to sing it. He says, what's your guilty pleasure song? What's your go-to song? And I say, it's Ain't No Way. He has that small silence that's very knowing that says, well, go and sing it. Sing it. So I go, okay, I'll sing it. So I start singing Ain't No Way, and I do like a little bit of the song. And unbeknownst to me, that gets sent to someone, because I don't think I even saw the interview myself. That interview gets sent to Clive Davis and Brian Grazer. The rest is sort of history. I get a call from my agent who says, oh, so National Geographic is doing The Next Genius, and it's going to be about Aretha Franklin, and they would like you to consider playing the role. And there's a meeting coming up if you want to take. I was like, how?
Is there someone else you want to play that you just like to, their song right now, just in case?
I don't know if there's another. There are, many people that I would love to play, but I haven't even thought that far because of where we are right now. Like there are so many icons that I'd love to play Sarah Vaughan maybe at one point. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe someone else will come up and I'm like, well,
You have had just such an incredible screen career in a very short amount of time, relatively speaking. What is it like? You've played now 2 larger than life real people. What is that like? And do you prefer that to playing a fictional character?
What is it like? It's daunting because, there are people that already have an impression of who that person is before you play them. But then you sort of have to let that go and find out what your version is of this person so that you can do it as fully and as truthfully as you possibly can. And I don't prefer one over the other. I think there's a really beautiful thing about meeting someone that you've never met before that doesn't exist in the world at all, because you get to create that from scratch. And there are no preconceived notions of who they are or what they do or what they sound like or who they can be. So there is a beauty in creating something from scratch, but there's also something really special about bringing to life someone that you may never have been able to meet before, but they existed, and keeping that spirit alive almost, and keeping their legacy going in a way. So both have a beauty to it. Yeah.
You've always written in conversation with history in your work. That's always very present in everything you write. But what made you want to dive into writing the story of a real historical figure, and Aretha in particular?
It's Aretha Franklin through the lens of genius. And I thought, wow, the Genius franchise is for the first time going to look at a woman genius, a Black woman genius, a Black American woman genius, a genius who's a mom. So I thought, wow, I very much want to tell that story, because I feel that it's a story that can show us the different way that a woman might be a genius, the way we work in community, the way we work to synthesize and bring things together. We don't just lock ourselves up in our ivory towers, but we are out there in community synthesizing as Aretha did, how we turn our difficulties into beautiful things like Aretha did. alchemizing her pain into sonic gold. So it was, as a Black American woman, I thought, what more beautiful project? There is not a more beautiful project for me to be a part of. I take my sisterhood very seriously. So.
And then Courtney, obviously C.L. Franklin was a real person, but in terms of public familiarity and public record, probably a lot more private figure than public in many ways. So how does that compare to playing someone much more in the public eye, like say Johnny Cochran? Where does that slot in on the scale of playing a totally fictional person to real, very much in the public eye person?
Well, I think, Black in the day, in the 60s and the 70s, he was probably one of the most famous Black people around. So, everybody knew who C.L. Franklin was around the country because he was selling his sermons, which was revolutionary. So, and so from that standpoint, I don't approach it as, he was not well known now. He was the man back in the day, back in that time period that we're shooting. And so consequently, he had a swagger about himself, with his little hats on and his shiny suits. We used to call them shark skin. His little shark skin suits on and his processed hair, fried lard laid to the side. So he was the man. So that's how I portrayed him, as somebody who was supremely confident and cocky, and from which he fell from that perch, as his life was anything but that, as he toward the end of the movie. So gave me somewhere to go.
In recognition of all you've done, the people of the world hereby crown you Queen of Soul.
Make sure the world only sees the Aretha Franklin you want them to.
You're gonna remember her name, Aretha.
She's too young to go out there.
It's easier for a woman to be the helpmate of a king than it is for a man to be the helpmate of a queen.
I know that you all got disrupted by the pandemic.
Very much so.
Yeah. How did that shape or alter your process as a performer? I mean, did it change or deepen anything for you with that like extra time in the middle?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You think you're going to live with someone for maybe 4 months tops, and you end up living with that person for a year, essentially is what happened. And so I guess the relationship with myself and Aretha in this space just became a little bit more concrete. I guess there were things that, you know, you're making choices, and at the beginning I was slightly unsure, is that the right choice? Do I do it like this? Do I try like this? But as we were getting towards this year sort of passing by, and then we go back to work, I was able to make decisions faster. I sort of knew the way to say something, what rhythm I wanted to say it with, or the intention behind something. It felt like it had settled in far more than it had previously. Yeah. It actually was really helpful to have that time.
So I wrapped in March, like when COVID started, like literally the day I flew back, school shut down. So then we were on like a 5-month break, and then they said I was wrapped, and then they said no reshoots or anything. But then like later on in October, I hear I have to go back for a week, and then I have to go back for a week in November. So it was kind of hard having to go back in COVID. I mean, I didn't have many scenes to film, so it wasn't that hard for me to get back kind of in the groove, but it was kind of hard being in that situation and having to like interact with people that way.
Yeah, it wasn't, I would say the same thing. It was the getting back in the groove wasn't so difficult. It was figuring out the COVIDs, because because of COVID, we shoot differently. There's a different rhythm to the shooting, and it's a more involved, and the more steps that we have to take as a company. And so it's relearning how to shoot a movie. And then once you get used to shooting in COVID land, ungetting used to that is in going back to, you know, so it was you know, and we're all figuring this out as we go, because we were the first group to go in, one of the first groups to go in and go back, and so it was very challenging for everybody to you know, figure it out and still keep the integrity of what's happening in front of the camera, with the masks and the shields and the different groups that have to stay together, and the contact tracing, and all of that is in between the actors, the cameramen, and the camera. So it took a minute to get our rhythm down with COVID, so we can go, okay, now what were we doing? Where were we? and do the scene, because everything is really about Cheyenne talking and listening. That's really what it's about, talking and listening.
The COVID shutdown did allow us to strengthen the story. I did a lot of rewriting, a lot more research, enjoyed listening to, you know, Never Gonna Break My Faith, her song that came out last summer. Also, once we got back in September, we had a couple more safety shutdowns, because, you know, we were getting nose swabbed every day. We had a couple shutdowns. We had to cut parts of the script because, you know, when you have shutdowns, we lost days, shooting days. And we had to be wrapped by the day before Thanksgiving. And so we actually I had to go through and cut scenes. The story is strong enough that it does hold together beautifully, but there were a lot of like party scenes where there were going to be a lot of people, that it wasn't going to be safe because of COVID. And so we had to reconceptualize, if that's even a word, those scenes. But the spirit was very strong. The force was very strong in this one. And we were all so dedicated to making a beautiful series, telling a beautiful story. Everyone from Cynthia to Anthony Hemingway, our producing director, all of our producers, all the crew, everybody, Courtney B. Vance, so dedicated to bringing their A game every day.
Yeah. Well, along similar lines, in the meanwhile, as well, we had this sort of eruption of a national movement and unrest in a way that I really don't think we've seen in this country since the 1960s and what we see in the show. And obviously you had shot, I think, a lot of that already by the time you came back, but coming back in and, you know, having those parallels, just like, what was that like coming back with all of that being back in play and being so raw in maybe a way that it like wasn't in that exact like precise moment.
It was wild because I don't know that we knew that that was what was going to happen. It just sort of felt right and sort of perfect for the moment that we were in, to be able to tell this story about where she was and the music and the reason why she was making some of the music she was making, and the decisions that she was making as well at that time. And that we were sort of mirroring the experience that was happening at that time as well, in the very moment that we were living through. I thought it was very important. And I don't know, it felt like this was an even more important story to tell today because of the way in which she was determined to be a part of that moment as well. Yeah.
For both of you, we talked about this pause for COVID, but also what happened in the meanwhile is that the type of unrest and activism that we see in the series in the 1960s really kind of returned to our national stage in a way that we perhaps haven't seen since then. So did that impact your conversations or your thoughts about the work when you returned?
I'll jump in. The answer is yes and no, because our story is our story. What was happening in our world in 20, we're still dealing with the effects of, because we refuse to actually deal with issues of race and color and caste and gender. We refuse to deal with it because we, folks want to, make America great again, and we need each other. At a certain point, I don't know what it's going to take, a 9/11 situation, because, when 9/11 happened, we all, at least in New York, everybody came together because nobody was black or white, everybody was gray because of the ash. So, unfortunately in this country, after the insurrection, I thought that, that's it, we're going to come together. Nope. So, that's just human nature. We still think that we can do it without each other, and we can't. And that's, to me, is the message that we need to come together on all levels. And that's what I think Pastor C.L. Franklin recognized, and because his best friend was Martin Luther King, and they were both at the end of their lives trying to bring the poor people. It's not a color thing; it's a economic thing, and that's of course when they took Dr. Reverend out, because he recognized that it's about all of us, not about black folks or white folks. It's about
Times are changing, and I want to keep changing with it. You got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
This is what you were meant to do. You just got to flaunt your power.
There will never be another one like me.
The show's called Genius. You have won a Genius grant. What does that word mean to you? And do you think it is different when it's a woman or a black woman and things like that?
Well, the word, it's a singular ability. It's something that endures. It's the way genius are people who can alchemize and transform things. And also in my interpretation of the word, a genius is someone who can, who by holding my light, I help you recognize see the evidence of your own. Yeah. And that's a different kind of genius. And I do think, in my experience, that women geniuses, female geniuses do that. We do that for each other more readily. And it's all because it's all context. It's not like we all do it or not. It's not like that. It's just that recognizing that female genius, because of its context and because of its circumstances, is called upon in different ways than sometimes male geniuses. It's a lot to be proud of.
Well, as you were researching and writing this process, is there one thing you learned that either really surprised you about her, or just was like that key in the door that just turned the light bulb on for you?
Her sense of humor, I think. I mean, that exuberance, that American exuberance, that you could say African American female exuberance. Like when she was in Muscle Shoals, like we show in episode 1, she was in Muscle Shoals with these awesome musicians, but they were white guys and she's a Black woman and it's 1967 and there's a lot of racism going on, you know what I'm saying? But these are cool guys, and to break the ice in between takes, she's telling jokes. And the fact that she just had such a great sense of humor and also she knew what she wanted. You know, I just love that. I mean, you could figure we'd know that about her because people, you know, a lot of people say, oh, she's a diva, you know, but I just think I would rather call her a Black woman who was strong. You know what I mean?
I always go back to Beyonce. A diva is a female version of a hustler, right?
Love it. I love it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I know you were able to meet her a few times before she died. How did that shape or inform your performance?
Well, you know, I met her the first time after we did a show at the Color Purple. She came to see it. And evidently we pleased her, which was great because she stayed for the whole thing. We met her afterwards. She sang the line, "I'm here, back to me." So couldn't have been happier after that. And then I saw her again at the Kennedy Center Honors where I was about to perform, and she remembered me and was like, "Oh, you can sing." I was like, that's it. I'm happy. That's it. I don't need anything else. And what that sort of left me with was, especially when this came around, was I hope that I make her proud doing this. I hope that she knows that a person who valued what she thought of the work I was doing is telling the story with her as well. I you know, it meant a lot.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Kennedy Center, there's that amazing video of your performance where we get to see her reaction to you.
With the eyes closed.
Would you like do a scene or deliver a song and then like think about that and be like, I hope I just evoked that reaction?
Yes, you know, I hope so. I hope that's such a wonderful way to put it, you know, to be able to sing something and to know that was the reaction that was brought about by a performance of mine. You sort of wish, I hope that every time, and if she's anywhere listening, hope that every time she hears me singing, that's how it feels when she hears it. You know, it's that, and I wish that for anyone. You know, I hope that whenever people hear me sing, they feel that, they feel the love in it, they feel bliss, whatever that moment is with her eyes closed and her singing along. I hope that people get to feel that too, and I definitely hope that wherever she is, she got those vibes from me too.
She very famously taught herself to play the piano, and we get to see you tinkle the ivories a little in the show. Yeah. What has been your relationship to the piano and that experience for you? Was it similar to hers, different?
No, I mean, if I learn a little bit, I know very little on the piano. I've learned it by hearing. That's how I learn most of the time. I guess I've been too scared to jump at it and dive in and play it completely. There's so much going on that I'm like, is this one more thing that I should take on? And if one more person says I think you should learn to play. I think you really should learn to play. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. So maybe it's a thing that I've been putting off for too long. I should probably like take on and learn something new. We're never too old to learn something.
Yeah. Well, then I'm guessing filming that felt probably more daunting than even just singing or the other stuff.
Yes. And it wasn't, I have to say, it wasn't always me playing. Sometimes it was me playing. Sometimes it was someone else, because there are definitely movements that I cannot play.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Maureen. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.